But welcome everybody to SBAM's webinar series. Today we're talking about the new normal and returning to work. And we have with us Cherrin. Daniel is the owner of Northcoast Strategies, and he is a member of the SBAM Board of Directors as well. So a little bit about Daniel. Through advocacy, collaboration, and strategic relationships, Daniel has built a successful career as an attorney, lobbyist, and public relations professional. Now, this includes serving as the communications director for the city of Detroit and press secretary to the mayor of Detroit, a federal lobbyist for the Detroit Regional Chamber of Commerce, and the owner of an independent public affairs consultancy. And over the past 18 years, Daniel has worked on a number of high-profile issues, advising university presidents, mayors, CEOs, association executives, and others, ranging on issues from restoring the public's trust in the city of Detroit after its mayor went to prison, serving as the spokesman for Michigan's smallest and most historic city, representing one of the busiest international border crossings along the US-Canadian border, advising a university president on crisis management related to their kidney transplant program, and leading a series of stakeholder meetings in Ontario around an 1,800 megawatt offshore wind farm proposal. Daniel believes the way forward is to engage through strategic communication, strategic relationships, and something valuable to share. Daniel works to protect and enhance the reputation of organizations and people in the public eye. So I'm Sarah Miller, and I've worked with Daniel through our relationship with SBAM over the past several years, and we were really pleased that he was able to join us today to talk about communicating with your team as we all look to get back to work. So Daniel, thank you for joining us today, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Sarah, and thank you to SBAM for the opportunity to share some of these thoughts as people get ready to go back to work. And thank you for joining us this afternoon. My goal today is to give you a blueprint to help your team return to work. I'm not sure how you've been communicating with your team throughout this crisis, but this will provide a blueprint for engaging your employees and finding a way to transition them back to work. And really, we have a guidepost to look at. We have businesses returning in Beijing, in Seoul, in Sydney, Taipei, Atlanta, San Antonio, and others. And in all those places, it's important to watch companies like yours and how they're returning and the issues that they're going through to learn best practices. And a few things that we know already is that it's important to talk to your team. They need to hear from you, and they need to hear from you on a regular basis. Your messages need to be clear and consistent, and really they need to be authentic. They need to see how you're affected by this and how you're working to bring them back to work, either remotely still or in phases. And they really need to hear it from you as the business executive, as the CEO, as the company founder. It's really important that they hear from you directly. And this is a message from Arne Sorensen, the CEO of Marriott International. It's a video message that he gave. I'm not going to play it. You can see the link there if you do. But it's an incredible message that is very brief and very direct. Arne is recovering from cancer and came back to deliver a message directly to his team worldwide in regards to the steps that they're taking to get back to work and the impact it's had on their company. So there are a lot of things that we don't know, and it's good to know. It's good for people to know what you don't know, but there are things that we do know, and we do know that communicating with your employees, your customers, your suppliers is more important than ever. If they don't hear from you, they don't know what's going on, and even if you are still planning things, it's important that you let them know that. And so we talk about this new normal, or going back to normal. And I believe that we shouldn't go back to normal, that their life won't be normal, at least not until there's a vaccine or we find our new groove. So it's important for you to redefine what that new normal is. And and then move your business forward on that guideline. And so, we're going to be changing the way we work. We're going to be changing the way our offices look. This is an office that Cushman and Wakefield put together. If you see the black lines around the desks, that's 6 feet. They're asking people to walk in one direction, just as a model for when offices or businesses return. But there is no normal anymore, and it's up to you to redefine what normal will be. There are guidelines in terms of phasing in, going back to work, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Maybe all your staff won't come in together. You'll bring them in phases or in shifts, depending on what your industry is. So it's going to be slow. And so really, we need to be patient. And we need to know that people are having a difficult time transitioning, will have a hard time transitioning back. And so that we just need to be patient with them and to keep things fluidly as possible. We've been socially distanced for so many weeks. Getting near anyone might be uncomfortable for us. And so we need to keep that in mind. We also need to keep in mind when people do return to work that we'll have personal issues pulling us in different directions. Our children will still be in school, or maybe over the summer they won't be at camp. We have high-risk family members that are still staying at home. Some of us may be dealing with losing a loved one. And so we as executives need to be understanding of that and let our staff know that family does come first, and we are here for them. And we know that they have a lot on their mind because we have a lot on our mind. And that is also really knowing what your employees are thinking about, and it's really their health and safety and the steps that you are taking to keep their health and safety top priority, and the steps that you're doing that to get them to transition back to work. So letting them know that really involves straight talk. Just tell them what you know, and tell them what you need to tell them, because real talk builds trust. And right now, we need to be able to trust the leaders that we rely upon in government and in business. And so, if you don't know something, just let us know that you don't know, but that you're thinking about it, because we just want to know what you're thinking about. And so, it's important for you to be transparent. Then, in communicating with your staff, it's also important to provide the context. They need to know everything not everything that you're thinking about, but they generally need to know the things that you're thinking about and that you're thinking of them, and to put things into context as to why you're doing these things and why you're putting these processes in place before they get there, before they get to work. And a great example is what's going on in New Zealand. And the Prime Minister, most people in New Zealand trust their Prime Minister, in part because the way that she's communicating with them. Her messages are clear and consistent. They're sobering and soothing. She has a way of connecting with her constituency where they're really trusting, they really believe in what she's talking about, because she's not preaching at them, she's not talking down to them, she is standing with them. And as an executive, that's how your employees need to see you, that you may be the founder of the company or the head of the company, but at the end of the day, we're all human, and you're standing with them. She's also been extremely accessible. And so she has frequent Facebook live chats. They're informal, informative, they show a personal side of her, and that's something that we can all learn from. So knowing these principles, we need to figure out what your plan is going to be. And so we'll talk about putting together a plan and then figuring out what your content is, what you're going to say. And then I'll close with a few final thoughts about taking care of your employees. So what's your plan? First, it's communicating your preliminary opening plans with your stakeholders. We don't know when you're going to return to work. Maybe you do. But you should engage people now in letting them know the steps that you are taking to get things back up and running. If you haven't done so already, I would suggest creating a back to work committee, a committee that is cross-functional of people from different disciplines within your company to figure out what that plan is going to be. And then before your staff gets back to work, it's communicating what the logistics are. How are they going to get back to the work site, who's going to come back first, and so forth. Setting up a specific email and telephone number for people to contact if you haven't done that already, or place on your website that they can go to for more information. It's preparing the posters and the handbook or the website or the other protocols to get people back to work. Providing them with a personal update on you, on key people in the organization, an operational update, the status of the workforce, and the status of the company. I think at this stage, people are looking to know not only if they're healthy and their colleagues are healthy, they want to know how the company is doing as well. And then it's to prepare for the first day back at work. This is your grand opening, your grand reopening. And so you should think of doing something to help people ease the transition back. And so I would consider creating a campaign or having a reopening around a theme, something that is inspiring, something that is built around your mission, that people can gather around, that they are really returning back to something special and meaningful. Honda has their campaign as the power of something. There's onward together, getting back to work. Regardless, it's a great opportunity to instill a sense of purpose in your staff in terms of why they work for you, why they work for your company, and the problems that your company is solving. And that's why it's critical for you to think of something engaging to help them ease back in. And then it's taking a look at your current content. Your employee handbook, your current policies and procedures that aren't COVID-19 related, how you're communicating with your customers, your social media posts, if you're scheduling posts in advance. It's taking a look at things that you've done already and making sure that they're all updated pursuant to the new protocols that you're putting into place, and making sure that that's updated and communicated. And making sure that it's relevant to the current situation. Then, as soon as you have details, it's communicating what those details are. So we get inundated with executive orders that may change from day to day. New policies from different regulatory agencies that you may be following. Things are so fluid and changing so rapidly, but at least they're being communicating to us. And so now we're accustomed to getting news and having that information change very rapidly. So regardless of whether things change, it's just important to get things out as soon as you have them. And then not only that, but to also put together any necessary training for your staff before they get to work, and putting that in place. So in addition to emailing it out or letting people know about it, it's important that you post them in a place that people could see them. So that's on your website. When people return to work, it's in the lunchroom or in other areas that people can see these new policies in place. Then it's important for you to also solicit feedback before people return to work, while they're at work, and afterwards. It's important that they get engaged in terms of what they're looking for, how they're reacting to the things that you're doing. And you can do this through surveys, through Zoom meetings, through digital chats, through emails or whatever. But it's really important that you communicate with your staff and get feedback immediately. At the same time, though, you need to be prepared to answer questions that your staff has. Some may be difficult questions, some may be questions that you don't know, but really, as an employee, I would want to know that my leadership is listening to me, that they're hearing what I have to say, and that they're taking that in to figuring out a path forward. So you can never over-communicate in this situation. The news cycle is changes by the second, and there's going to be more communication more frequently. But you should really find your rhythm in communicating with your employees. And so maybe you compile a bunch of stuff and you have a newsletter that goes out every Monday, Wednesday, or Friday at 9 a.m. or 7 a.m. Then you supplement that newsletter and you do a newsletter through MailChimp or through some other CRM system that you could track who opens it and who doesn't. But then you supplement that with text messages or emails or social media posts for people to see. And then again, you put that on a place on a website that people can go to for reference. And so figuring out what your rhythm is and the cadence of communications and who it's from is really important. And I really encourage that it comes from the top leadership. It's also important that you start sharing stories. If you haven't done so already, I really encourage that you gather different stories from people from working from home, stories about people in your circle, in your bubble, and share those stories. Or share, different customer experiences or whatever. But we need to find ways to keep connected and develop that human connection because we're not connected physically just yet. And even when we do return to being physically close, we're still going to be a little bit distant. And so people need to know how people have been spending this time, how we're doing, how we're reacting. And so gathering those stories are really important, both verbally, in writing, and I would really encourage gathering some video if possible. So it's also, as an executive, it's important for you to be visible. Hard to do when in this age of socially distancing. But as an executive, it's important for you to check in with people regularly. Maybe it's people that you don't check in with regularly, but you're just giving them a call to see how they're doing. I know I would appreciate that if someone called me to see how I was doing, somebody that I worked with very closely, especially the head of my company, the owner. So it's really important that you check in with people and be visible. As I mentioned before, the Prime Minister of New Zealand has Facebook Live sessions, and those are things that you can also schedule. Maybe you have a Wednesday huddle, but instead of getting around the water cooler, everyone's in their office or at home, and you're doing it over Zoom. And so those regular connections are extremely important. Or also something that I'm learning with my kids studying from home, having office hours, just sitting at your desk and being available by computer, letting people know that on Thursdays between 3 and 5, I'm going to be available for people to call or Zoom or knock on my door or whatever, that you're just being accessible. It's also getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. We have to plan for the fact that another disruption will occur, that there will be a second wave, and that you need to be very fluid and flexible in making that change. And so it's being prepared to do that whenever that happens. Maybe it's an employee that comes down with some symptoms, even though you're back to work. And how do we deal with that? And how do we address that within our company? And so you need to be prepared now so that you're not caught off guard later. Okay, so knowing a little bit about a plan and some of the principles, we need to know what you're going to say. What are the key messages that you're going to say? And before that, you really need to know who your audience is. And you need to put yourself in their shoes. You need to know what their unique needs are, what their values are, what they're coming from, what's important to them. And that will help dictate your key messages to them. And different staff require different messages, and it's just important to know who you're talking to and what actions you want them to take. So one thing that you can really rely on is your company's vision, your values, your mission. It's your North Star. It's something that you go back to all the time to remind people what you do and why you do. And so knowing that and reevaluating that given the current circumstances, but really reminding people what your mission is critical in communicating with them. And it's something that you can always fall back on. Also, the words you choose really matter. We are all very emotional right now. And so it's really important that you choose your words carefully and that you phrase it from the perspective of where people know where you're coming from, and for you to anticipate if there may be any objections, right? There are certain restrictions that you'll have to put together to get people back to work safely. Some people may not be happy with some of those restrictions. You really need to anticipate where there might be some objection and work to diffuse that early on. Also, in your communications, you need to demonstrate caring, conviction, hope, and optimism. The tone of how you talk really needs to reflect the gravity of the situation, and people need to see that coming from you. Over the past few weeks, we all realize that we're all human, we're all vulnerable, that this problem is not targeted to one specific person, it's a global problem. And so really you need to let others know how it impacts you, and that needs to be reflective in your communications with your with your employees, suppliers, and customers. You also need to know what they want to hear. It's knowing who your audience is, knowing the words that will connect with them, but also knowing what they want to know, and knowing how you can phrase it in a way that will help them benefit the company. And so, we want to know how you're going to keep us safe, what's the impact on the company, what's the impact on my job, and knowing how they are contributing to moving the company forward. So we all come to work with a job to do, and we all need to be reminded of that. But at the same time, we want to know that you're going to keep us safe. You're taking the steps to keep us safe, and that we're going to be economically secure, at least for the time being. And if something happens again, what's going to happen? So that involves being upfront, transparent, and really concise with your employees. We don't have time to, there's so much going on that we don't have time to we need to cut through all the clutter and get to the bottom line of what you want to communicate and what people want to hear to help everyone get back to work and move forward. And so you don't have to tell us everything, but we want to know things when you know it. And if you don't know, just let us know we don't know. Again, we're all human. We can't expect to do everything or know everything, but we are expected to let people, be honest and upfront with people, because again, that builds trust. And so it also helps in terms of how you're communicating the information. Here we're talking through a webinar. I have slides. I can follow up with a white paper that you have to reference later. But for your employees, how are they going to digest the information that you want to share, and how are they going to remember it? I really would. So you want to really boil it down to something that's very concise. I think infographics are very helpful. There's a great website that I use called Canva. And it's templates that you can put together easy communications to create infographics on. Videos are also really important. It's so easy today to make a video on your smartphone or on your iPad or on your computer. And so just record a brief message under 5 minutes, 3 minutes would be great. But that's also very helpful. And that could be very helpful with your training as well. And so knowing what you're going to communicate and how you're going to communicate it are extremely important things. Now, I always hesitate to put this in, but I'm also a lawyer, and it's just something to keep mindful in your communications with your employees, and it's always to be mindful of litigious people. And so in your communications, you may want to consult a lawyer, you may want to look at what other companies are doing, but you always want to make sure that you're protecting yourself. You don't want to take anybody to take advantage of a situation. Maybe you have laid some people off, maybe you have some people on furlough that you're bringing back. You just want to make sure that you're protecting yourself legally in doing things. And so putting things in writing is always helpful. Posting it publicly, also always helpful. And knowing what the processes are and what the protocols are, extremely helpful as you move forward. And things that you should be looking out for are privacy issues, workplace safety, discrimination, and other issues. So also in your communications, you should look at see how you leverage data using experts and using past case studies of other companies that have done things that you're trying to implement. And so I would watch the news closely, look at different industry websites, and see what works best for you. But it's always good to see what others are doing and how it applies to your specific situation. So, and again, and I can't reinforce this enough, it's to let people know where to go for more information. I really think that SBAM has done a great job of creating content and for its members and posting it in ways that we can go back to and reference. And so I think that their website is a wealth of resources. And so I really advise you creating a place for people to go for more information that you can always point back to in terms of where they can go, and you're creating a digital record. And so again, things change, things can get updated, and at least they have a place for people to go. And then it's looking at what are the most effective communication channels for you to get the message out. It's putting together the infographics. I think Slack is a great resource and easy to use. That is an app for your phone or for your computer or for your laptop. And there are multiple channels that you can use depending on the different groups within your company or getting feedback. Zoom, certainly, video. And so it's finding really the most effective communication channels to getting your message out. Okay, so I talked a little bit about some principles to keep in mind in putting together your communications plan, putting together a plan to get people back to work, creating the content. Now I just have a few final thoughts in terms of taking care of your staff. And so, you know, in today's world, there's no such thing as over communicating with people. It's a matter of how you present it. But it's also how you take care of your employees. And so, so here's just a few more final thoughts. It's important for you to keep your staff motivated. Again, it's very difficult. It's a very difficult time for all of us. We all want to get back to some sort of normalcy. Again, we have to redefine that. We need to take care of our families, maybe our older parents. And so it's very important to let people know that that you're grateful and to practice gratitude. Things are very stressful, but we need to know and recognize people's contributions, both at home, in the community, and at work. And that's why we need to find what those stories are to inspire other people in our workplace to do even better. And so sometimes it's even nice to recognize people for their accomplishments. It could be for their accomplishments at work, or maybe their accomplishments in the community. Maybe they've worked at a food pantry or have done something else to support somebody in their community. And so really, I am a big fan of writing personal handwritten notes. Not something we expect today anymore. And so look to do something to practice inspired gratitude. Then it's investing in your staff's mental health. Again, this is something that affects us all, and mental health is such a difficult issue that many of us are grappling. And so it's providing a resource for people to turn to if they need help, to posting a crisis line with a local provider, investing in activities such as yoga, dance, or happy hours, again, through Zoom or social distancing, not in your office. Maybe it's helping your team members find childcare or providing them with flex time. Or really being understanding in how they're transitioning back to work. Many of our kids will be home from the summer, and so maybe it's finding some ways to even incorporate their children into providing real job experience if their kids are older. And so maybe there are things that we can do to get our kids involved in our business and trying to find some of those things to do. So it's really trying to be creative and helpful and supportive of the people that work for you in making sure that they not only maintain physically healthy, but they're mentally healthy as well. And then the final piece is to update your contingency plans for the next crisis. And the next crisis will probably be the same one that we're experiencing now. You know, whenever the second wave occurs in the fall or in the winter, or depending on how quickly people get back to work and get sick of being in quarantine, maybe sooner than that. And so it's really being able to look at your business, how you handle this pandemic, how you're handling this pandemic now, and what you need to do for the next crisis in getting those plans in place right now to address your vulnerabilities. Maybe that's even conducting a SWOT analysis again, looking at your strategic plan with renewed eyes in terms of what's going on in the world around us, and changing or adjusting your business model. And so these are things that you can do to keep your business resilient, to keep your business competitive, or to give your business an advantage or upper hand in the new world we experience today. But really, there's no such thing as over communicating with your employees. And we've really stressed the need to communicate more effectively in terms of what we're saying and how we're packaging it. So that's the plan in a nutshell. And Sarah, I'm happy to answer questions or continue to talk more, but I think I'll stop there and be able to answer questions.
Great, thank you. That was really helpful. I do see a few people have their hands raised. If you have questions, you can actually use the Q&A feature here in Zoom. It's at the bottom of the screen, and I'd be happy to share those with Daniel. We will also take questions at sbam@sbam.org, and I can share those with him as well. So whichever works for you, if we get some questions that come in. The slides and the recording will be made available on our website here this afternoon. So I'll give people, if you have any questions, that Q&A box in the bottom. Daniel, I think that was really helpful. I know it's a tough situation, and trying to navigate it also, it's just coming at us so quickly that you're just reacting. So it's nice to hear some things that we might be able to do proactively. We have a question that says, in your opinion, what is the line in sharing too much during this time with staff? Do you think staff sometimes might get concerned if we overshare emotions? So how would you respond to that one?
I think that you have to be careful in oversharing, but I think it's important for people to see the personal side of you, right? We're all developing relationships, and for many of us, we'll be redeveloping relationships because of socially distancing. There's that level of connection that is missing, and trust that we have to rebuild. And I think that we appreciate people more when we can see a personal side of the people that we work with, and really getting to know the people that we work with. And so, I would be guarded in terms of what you share and how you're sharing it. I would share a little and then have the other person share, and then maybe you develop that connection, and then maybe you want to share more. But it's really important, I think, for people, to see the cat rolling down your keyboard, or your kids coming into the room in your Zoom. We're all human. We're all dealing with the same issues, and that's why I think it's just really important for people to make those connections. But again, I defer to you and the relationships that you have with your staff in terms of what you share, how you share it, and how you develop that relationship from there.
Great. We have a couple other questions. One is that you mentioned an app you like for infographics and videos. It is Canva. We use it too at SBAM. That's C-A-N-V as in Victor A. And I think there are some free versions, or you can pay a small monthly fee to get access to some more of their templates and whatnot. But that's Canva, C-A-N-V-A.
That's right.
Yeah.
And there's also a video app that I've been using too called Biteable, Biteable. And that is also, they have a free version, they have a paid version where they have templates for you to create video. That's just one. I know that there are many others. I've been using that one. And so that's a great source to have as well. Or you could just use iMovie if you have an iPhone or something like that. I know my kids can navigate those very quickly and edit those, which if you have teenagers, is a great resource. So that's another good one for you to use.
Great. We have a question. A woman writes, I struggle with employees who don't engage much. The majority of her staff are on paid leave. They do Zoom department meetings once a week, and she sends trainings for them to do, but she's still worried about them being disconnected. So any tips for her?
So if I were you, I would give all your staff, all those people a call, just to check in with them and see how they're doing, what they're thinking about, how they're taking to the trainings, what are their suggestions and your thoughts on steps moving forward, given any back to work orders, or maybe even have some suggestions before you call them with a few things that you would suggest that they can do or resources that they could turn to, and then maybe follow up with something, maybe send them something to show your appreciation. Those are a few things that I would suggest doing.
That is great advice. I know here at SBAM, we do staff meetings, Zoom staff meetings, several times a week, and it's always good to kind of have that check-in with everybody and not just make it business, but also find out how people are doing. Maybe it's something funny that you've done or something, a new habit, just to create those connections that you usually have when you're in the office together. To try to create them virtually is helpful too.
Absolutely.
So unless we have any other questions, I think, I don't see any other questions coming in. I just want to remind everybody this will be available on our website, and thank Daniel very much for spending time with us today. SBAM has continued to develop these webinars. We've been working pretty quickly to get you all the information you need. So we do have a few more coming up I want to mention. Tomorrow we have Understanding Your PPP Loan Forgiveness. That's at 10 a.m. And then looking into next week, on Tuesday, we're talking about cleaning and disinfecting your business before reopening, just to make sure everybody is doing this safely and properly. And then next Thursday, we'll talk about identifying measures to ensure a safe return to the workplace. So look for those on our website at sbam.org/events here shortly for registration. We'll get those up today. And then the PPP loan forgiveness version or event is available to register for now. And of course, we're doing the daily briefing on Zoom and Facebook every day at 3 o'clock. So thank you, Daniel. Do you have any parting comments for the group?
I just think that SBAM's model is a good one for everybody to follow, with those daily check-ins, with the website, with the content that they're providing. Content is critical to communicating with people and getting it out there. And that's another way that you could distinguish yourself and get yourself out there to the community, and ensuring that your staff is wrapped around knowing your strategy moving forward. So Sarah, I really appreciate the chance to talk to everyone today, and I wish everybody much health and hopefully getting back to work soon.
Well, thank you. And thank you all for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.